If I lost all my muscle, had average genetics, and had to start building my physique all over again, I wouldn't be worried at all. In fact, I'd rebuild it in a fraction of the time because after 15 years in this game, I understand what it all comes down to: skill set, mindset, and execution. Most lifters never develop all three of these. That's why they spend years spinning in circles, chasing progress they never reach. I can't go back in time and hand this playbook to my younger self, though that would definitely save him a lot of pain and time, but I can give it to you, so at least you don't have to waste so many years guessing. Now, this video isn't a motivation thing. It's not just try harder, bro advice. After all, there are lots of people out there working 10 times harder right now than they need to be and still not seeing great progress. No, this is the exact plan I would follow to go from scratch to a sick natural physique in 3 years. Now, if you're relatively new or you've been training for a while but still feel stuck in this sort of purgatory where maybe you've got some decent strength, you've got some decent discipline, but you still look like you've got a long way to go, then this is what you need. The difference between where you are now and where you want to be isn't just about pushing harder. It's about executing a system and a strategy that is guaranteed to work. Most lifters fail because they don't have a real plan. They're always chasing the next trend, switching from bulking to cutting with no structure, jumping into influencer training programs, different ones all the time, fasting 1 month, trying high volume bro splits the next, who knows, right? All this shit. And when you don't know where you're going, everything sounds like a good idea. But when you have a roadmap, a clear one, you stop wasting time on bullshit. You stop reacting and you start building. So I would set my roadmap for the next 3 years right from the start. This is already a big disconnect. Most lifters can't see further than even the next 30 days. And then they're disappointed when they don't look all that sick after the next 3 months. But this is a long-term game that requires setting the right long-term goals with the right roadmap to get there. So here's the 3-year plan roughly. And this is assuming that I'm starting relatively skinny fat. First, we cut to a baseline body fat percentage. Then we're going to reverse out and lean bulk for roughly 2.5 years. And then we cut again at the end to reveal the result. Each phase is going to be dialed in with purpose, and every part of the process stacks on the next one. So we start with phase 1, the cut. And the goal here is to get lean once and just never get fat again. This cut will take as long as it needs to take to get the body fat down to around 10 to 12% as a man, maybe around 20% as a woman, give or take. And we're doing this while maintaining or even building strength in the process. For the sake of this example, let's say it takes 12 weeks. Now, this isn't about getting shredded. It's about resetting your foundation so your body is primed for real growth, and so you now have a solid baseline to compare to in the future. The training here is going to stay simple but dialed. We don't need crazy volumes, complex splits to start, so I would actually run a 4-day upper-lower split, hitting every major muscle group twice a week. Now, about 70% of my volume, let's say, it would come from the compound lifts, big movements, squats, pulls, rows, presses, any variations of these, because those are going to build the most bang for buck strength and size. Now, I'd use just 2 or maybe 3 isolation exercises at the end of each session or just throughout the session to bring up smaller areas and maybe polish the physique a little more as I go along. Rep ranges would fall somewhere in the, say, 5 to 10 zone for heavier compounds, 6 to 12 for we can call middle tier compound lifts, and maybe 10 to 15 for many isolation movements. I'd rest between 2 and 4 minutes on those big movements and maybe closer to 1 to 2 minutes on the isolations, but mostly just resting enough to make sure I perform my best on subsequent sets. The goal here is performance. I'm not chasing fatigue, I'm not chasing pumps, and I'm not chasing a bunch of soreness. I'm trying to improve performance with quality technique week after week. And by the way, if you want a sample 4-day upper lower split setup for free, you can go ahead and check out my video where I break one down for you. Now, on the nutrition side, I'd calculate my total daily energy expenditure with a simple TDEE calculator online, and I'd set my calories about 15% below that to begin the cut. I'd aim to lose about 0.5% to 1% of my body weight per week. Protein would be set at 1 gram per pound of my goal body weight in the future at around 12% body fat. So at my height of 6'2", that's going to be say around 225 grams for me. And I would not change that protein intake for the next 3 years probably. Fats would sit around 25% of my total starting calories, and I'd fill the rest in with carbs to support training and recovery. My meals would be built from simple, repeatable whole foods. I'd lock in a basic structure that I can meal prep and reuse daily. The fewer decisions I have to make, the better. I'd ensure I'm getting lots of fruits, lots of vegetables every day so I hit my fiber goals out of the park, and so I maximize health throughout this process, as that will facilitate even greater physique changes. As for supplements, it's minimal. 5 to 10 grams of creatine monohydrate daily, 10 grams of EAAs during training, and a protein powder on hand, but only for convenience, not for daily dependency. Pre-workout maybe once a week to preserve sensitivity to the product, and I personally use Allmax as my go-to supplements since they are the highest quality performance supplements on the market and at the best price. And you can go ahead and use code JMango15 if you want to use what I use. But remember, supplements don't build build physiques, habits do, foundations do. So don't get too caught up with the supplements thing. Keep it basic and simple, which, as you can probably tell by now, is sort of the core theme here for best results. And now this is where tracking becomes critical. Most people don't even know if they're progressing because they're not really measuring anything. I would weigh myself daily, first thing in the morning before eating or drinking anything, and after using the restroom, and then I'd plug it into an app like Happy Scale to smooth out and track my 7-day moving average. I'd take progress photos and waist measurements every 4 weeks to see things that the scale can't exactly show. I'd log my training in an app like Gravitas to ensure that I'm seeing progressive overload as often as possible and ensure maximum performance, because this is what's going to drive the biggest changes over the next 3 years. I'd track my food daily in something like MyFitnessPal. Remember, if it's not tracked, it's not real and you're just guessing. It often takes lifters multiple years just to start tracking their shit, and it's no wonder that they claim to be stuck or seeing suboptimal results for so long. I was most lifters, by the way. Now, once I reached that 10 to 12% body fat target roughly, I would transition into phase 2. We're playing the long game here, so we're going to reverse diet up to maintenance calories over about 2 weeks. Then we're going to hold that maintenance for another 4 weeks or so to maximize recovery from that deficit and prime my internal environment to get ready to grow some serious muscle. And then we begin a slow strategic lean bulk by starting with roughly a 5 to 10% calorie bump from maintenance, and the bulk will last once again 2.5 years. Yes, years, because this is where the real transformation happens. The rule here is going to be to gain no more than maybe 1% body weight per month on average across the span of my bulk, which may come down to a total of say 25 to 35 pounds by the end of the 2 years, roughly, give or take. Now, I'd be watching my waist measurements right alongside the scale weight to ensure that I'm not gaining fat too fast. If strength is rising steadily, body weight is going up very slowly on average, and the waist is staying relatively in check, I know I'm building a ton of muscle. And it's not about how much of a surplus should I be in, it's simply starting with that small calorie bump I mentioned of 5 to 10% and only making calorie increases as you feel you need to keep the slow and steady improvement of performance and slight bumps in weight across the span of the month going. This isn't about trying to gain weight every single week or else I didn't make progress. Every 6 to 10 months, I'd throw in a slow mini cut, 4 to 8 weeks long, just to trim back some of the excess body fat, reset the appetite and insulin sensitivity, and basically keep everything on track, but only if I feel I need it. Keep in mind, the more locked in you stay, the more in check you are, the less often you should need these mini cuts, and in some cases you may not even need one at all. But I would say that over the span of a 2.5 year lean bulk, there's a good chance you'll probably need at least one. And keep in mind, these aren't full-blown physique cuts or extreme aggressive deficits, they're performance resets for the most part. So I'm constantly optimizing my lifting technique and intensity as much as I can throughout this process, since the skill of lifting and pushing hard in my training at the same time is something that takes a while and it takes a lot of intention. It's something you have to practice and get better at. I'd still run the 4-day split probably for the entirety of these 3 years, but eventually with some slight increases in isolation work and maybe some volume increases where recovery allows for it. I'd rotate in some new variations of movements that feel a little bit better, align with joint health and progression, things that, you want to experiment with to see what aligns better with you and your body. Maybe it's dumbbell work over some barbell if needed, maybe it's machine rows instead of the free weights, whatever allows for optimal execution over time and consistent progression. And I'd start to care more about nutrient timing as well here, so prioritizing carbs around my training sessions specifically, spacing protein out very evenly, and sticking to whole foods that digest well and fit my lifestyle. The key to all of this is that we have our base of training and nutrition dialed already, so we're simply making tweaks over time, not radical changes to our entire worldview or ideology around this and complete diet overhauls and stupid things like this. 2.5 years go by where most of this time was spent in a well-fed state, maybe 1 or 2 small cuts in between, built a ton of muscle and strength with good technique, and then we hit phase 3, which is the final cut. 3 months to bring the body back to 10% now, or even lower potentially, since we did not let ourselves go on that bulk and we didn't get fat by going over say 15 to 18% body fat as a man, or equivalent to let's say 25 to 28% body fat as a woman. By this time, I've added maybe 15 pounds of muscle on the low end and maybe up to 25 pounds of muscle on the high end, depending on how insanely locked in I stay throughout it. And so now this final cut is going to be about bringing those changes to the surface. I would run another standard deficit of about 20% from maintenance to start, aiming for a slow loss, once again, of about 0.5% to 1% of my body weight per week on average. Protein's going to stay the same still. I'm only really adjusting fats and carbs, training sharp, and ensuring that I'm recovering well, and focusing heavily on preserving strength or even still building more on it during this process. No crash dieting, no panic, just dialing it in and finishing the plan. Now keep in mind, during the changes in caloric intake, most of it's going to be from carbs. Protein stays basically the same year round at that initial, say, 225 grams that I set as a target at the beginning. Fats would stay around a similar range, say maybe between 50 to 75 grams a day. Again, the lower end being near the tail end of a cut, the higher end during the peak of my gaining phase perhaps. And the rest is really wiggle room with carbs. To repeat something vital here, throughout every phase, I need to be tracking the 5 key metrics: my 7-day weekly average scale weight, my waist measurement, monthly progress photos, performance in the gym, and my daily caloric and macro intake. These 5 markers are going to give me the full picture and tell me exactly what's working, what's not working so well, and when and how to adjust each of these things. This is how I completely remove the emotion from this process, which gets in the way of so many beginner lifters that don't have this big picture in mind. I'm not guessing, I'm not reacting, I'm simply responding to the data and executing accordingly. And remember, consistency isn't about being perfect. You'll have off days, you'll miss a meal here or there, you'll go out, that's fine. What ruins progress isn't one day off, it's the pattern of falling off too often. Not tracking, not training, and not course correcting as quickly as possible. Optimization comes from micro adjustments. You prefer pull-ups to lat pull-downs? Cool, make the switch. Do you train better later on in the day? Move your sessions. Your digestion tanks from too many shakes? Well, build more whole food based meals. This plan is structured, but it adapts and it's not rigid. You have to evolve with it, and it has to evolve around you. And if you can simply reduce frequency of the damage done when going out, as well as the rebound time that it takes from a night out where the plan falls apart a bit, to getting right back on the horse, absolutely dialed in as quickly as possible, then the less those times are going to hold you back and the better you'll be able to build the skill and intuition of navigating those situations. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Most lifters don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they never understood how muscle and fat loss actually work, and they didn't have a long-term big picture view as to where they're supposed to go and for how long. They confuse effort with progress. They never track consistently. They never step back and assess and adjust as needed every single month or week. Instead, they'd rather jump to a new thing because they're thinking that they're one program away from the sudden miracle change of an amazing physique in 3 months. No. 3 years should always be the expectation and the way you're building your long-term roadmap when it comes to this game. This is a very long-term game, especially if you're doing this naturally. Most lifters, they just keep guessing. They're hoping the next thing is the one that works. They have broken expectations. They lack the patience for how long this process takes in general. But once you understand the principles, training, nutrition, and recovery, and how to apply them to your life, which is only going to happen through constant repetition and small tweaks over time, the process gets simple, not easy, but clear and consistent. Now, if you're ready to stop the guessing and lock in to achieve your best physique in the shortest period of time with everything you need to do so the right way, join the Modern Physique Hub, link down below at johnmango.com. Monthly programming, nutrition breakdowns, coaching calls, support from me directly, and a community of lifters just like you who are done playing the guessing game. Subscribe for more content like this, share it with a friend who doesn't look like they lift yet, and let's get locked in. I'll see you at the top.